when she had voted. My mother's 94, she's in Sibley County. So she's in Sibley County, and she said she voted, and I said, well, who did you vote for? She's in assisted living, so two ladies came around to do the vote, right? She said, I didn't vote for anyone, I just signed the ballot. This is for the primary, right? So she didn't even know what she signed, who she voted for, or anything. So I called the lady who runs the home, and I said, when those people come back for the general election, I want to be there. She called me, luckily, and I went and I sat there, and when they called my mother to come to the table to vote, I went with her. I'm a power of attorney. One lady sat quiet, the other lady freaked out. And I mean, she went full rabies. And I just ignored her. I said, well, call the police if you want to call the police, but I'm not leaving my mother's side. I'm going to make sure she knows what she's writing, and I know how she feels and how she's going to vote. Well, you can't say a word, I mean, she's screaming at me. And later come to find out, and this is really odd, after my mother voted, she put a little note or a little initial on the ballot envelope that they put the ballot in when they put it in their folder. So she knew who voted and for who, I should say. And anyway, she could even went as far as call the police. She turned out to be the Republican representative. I promise you, she wasn't Republican.
I wish that I could tell you that the story that you're telling has never been heard by me before, but we're hearing this all over the state, and we know that. I mean, the question is really not, do shenanigans occur in an election cycle? I think they occur every year. We had Hillary Clinton calling previous presidents illegitimate presidents, and she'd never recognized them. So the notion that you can call someone a conspiracist if they're a Republican who's concerned about the integrity of elections is just silly talk. I mean, like I say, many Democrats have had the same concerns, whether you're talking about the 2000 election or the 2004 election or the 2016 election. I don't know why in the world Americans wouldn't want to have elections that absolutely assure integrity and fairness. How did we get in this position where it's a game as to who can cheat and bend the rules? I mean, these are things, but I'm going to move on to other questions. But the bottom line is this, sir. Well, whatever. But what I'll tell you is this. We don't get to change the rules unless we win elections. We don't get to change the rules. That's why we're asking for, we watch for poll watchers, election judges, but Trump is doing his level best to get a look at the voter rolls in Minnesota. And Simon's, obviously pushing back. I'm hopeful that Trump will put some muster behind what he's asking for, and I think he probably will, and it'll undoubtedly come down to funding. And if there's a way that President Trump can say Minnesota's not going to get this chunk of money unless they comply, that's going to be the thing that pushes Steve Simon. Otherwise, he's not going to do it. And I think we absolutely need to recognize, and Republicans have been slow on this. When it comes time for the elections, the Democrats unite. The Republicans continue to fight. And as long as we keep doing that, we're going to keep losing. There's no way around it. Other questions? Yes, sir.
In the 2022 cycle, you showed a lot of courage on the COVID stuff, on the vaccine stuff. And I think you'll always deserve a lot of credit for that. And you're talking about how we need a fighter in Minnesota. I think you're absolutely right. But I'm filled with doubt about you, sir, because there's another issue that I think you showed cowardice on, and that's the issue of abortion. Before Roe v. Wade was overturned, you talked real big about how you were going to fight to end abortion in Minnesota before you could have done anything about it. Then during the cycle, Roe v. Wade was overturned, and suddenly you were presented with a situation where you could have done something about it as governor. And then you ran away from the issue as fast as you could, to the point of after your loss, you as a medical doctor said that you don't even know when life begins. If you can swing that hard on that crucial of an issue for the soul of Minnesota, why should we trust you to fight on any of those other issues?
Appreciate the question. I would say this. I think we've been presented with a notion that you're either this or you're that. And quite frankly, I think you can be both personally, profoundly pro-life, and yet recognize that from a public policy perspective, settled law, according to the legislative, judicial, and executive branches, is that access to abortion will be preserved, and that's settled law. So I think that there are things that aren't settled. We can do more to streamline adoption. We can do more to provide natural family planning tools to young people so that they can plan their families. We can do more in terms of making sure that pregnancy resource centers are funded so that when someone encounters an unplanned pregnancy, they can do something about it. But sir, it's your attitude that will cause us to lose again if you think that that issue should be raised up as a campaign issue in 2026. It is settled law. We have 7 Supreme Court justices in Minnesota. They are all liberally appointed. And they have already indicated, and it was done in 1990s and now. This is settled law. I think that we have to recognize that we can be personally pro-life, as well as understanding that from a public policy perspective, it's settled law. And then I would refresh your memory on the Bible. Because if you look at Genesis 2, it doesn't speak precisely to when life begins. Nor does the Bible ever tell us where life ends. I have pronounced many people dead in my life, in hospital settings and nursing homes. And oftentimes I could pronounce them dead now, or I could wait 5 minutes. We could do CPR now, or wait another 10 minutes. If we are going to think that we can win the 2026 election by elevating the social issues, that's exactly what Donald Trump said he would not do. And it's exactly what he's telling us not to do. He's saying park the social issues over here, run on good governance, try to straighten out Minnesota, win elections so we can have elections with integrity. But I appreciate your conviction very much. Genesis 2 says that life begins with the breath of God. Other questions? Other questions? Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. My question is about this transgender business. As a doctor, you got a unique perspective on this, and I'm kind of curious. And I don't even know all the drugs that are involved. I think there's more than hormones, but my understanding is all these drugs are not even approved by the FDA. And so how in the heck is that even going on?
Well, the FDA, here's the deal. When the FDA approves a drug, generally they focus initially on the approval with safety and efficacy, okay? Once they have safety and efficacy, after that, doctors can use it off-label because it's already been proven safe, and the efficacy doesn't have to be proven for every indication. It's simply that the pharmaceutical companies cannot advertise that it's indicated for this if it's not indicated for that. What we're seeing is FDA-approved drugs used for indications that it has not been approved for. But more importantly, what we're doing with young people is we are not able to get informed consent from them because there is no way that a 13-year-old can give informed consent as to does she understand the ramifications of having a bilateral mastectomy at the age of 13. There is no way that person can understand that. So informed consent is being violated. The standard of care is being violated. If you look at the National Health Service in England, they were pretty go on transgender affirming care. And that was probably from about 2010 to 2020. In the last 5 years, the National Health Service in England has said, we didn't stop any of the mental health issues with these people by doing this. We made things worse. Suicides were up. Why is it that first world European countries who've had more experience in this are running from that kind of a behavior, and we're running toward it? If you're an adult, as a physician, you get to make decisions, from my perspective, about your health. If you have a hot appendix and you don't want to have it operated on, we'll give it a shot and go with IV antibodies. If your breasts are humongous and they cause you neck pain and you want a reduction, you're an adult. But we have to draw the line with kids. We have to protect our children. And when they're adults, they can make their decisions. But we need to protect our children. Yes, sir.
I do want to thank you for your stand on during COVID. We were always searching for a little common sense out there when I felt like we're all being suffocated for those years. And I think we all behaved very badly as a government, as a country, I was disappointed. But anyway, I wanted to make 2 points in the way of. I was a welfare fraud investigator for 15 years here in the state for this county, for the county attorney's office. And I just want you to recognize, with all the talk now that they're going to do all this, everyone's saying, ooh, this fraud, it's so phony to me, because it was so bloody obvious at the time. And all of it, you remember back during the big one that made news was the daycare fraud down in Minneapolis. And I knew the investigators that worked that, they worked for the state. And they did a wonderful investigation, and they were punished for it because they happened to notice that it was all Somali, almost exclusively Somalis down there, and they were punished for noticing. And they told me how they were punished. It was ridiculous. I found through my experience as an investigator, and I've been investigating things for 40 years, and was that our biggest roadblock to a good, solid investigation, criminal investigation, was the state of Minnesota, in many ways, shapes, and forms. But we needed their information, we needed their insight, we needed their policies to be enforced. But they do everything they can, sadly, to encourage crime and to guide people through the criminal process. It's ridiculous. So I just wanted to say that I want you to be aware of it, that there's that side of it. The other concern I have is with our influx of illegal aliens and legal aliens, in that they must be, in my opinion, forced to assimilate. We have laws, we have a constitution, and when they come into, we talk about them setting up no-go zones or that like, and the fact that they're not assimilating to our ways, our constitution, which is the best. Their ways are inferior, and they're in conflict. And I was just wondering if you had any ideas, this coming, and it's getting more prevalent all around the world. Do you have any thoughts on that forcing the issue of making people assimilate and drawing those lines in the sand? You can't have your law when it's in conflict with ours. Ours is first.
I think it's pretty straightforward. Being a citizen of this country has privileges and responsibilities. And quite frankly, we are sabotaging our own country by allowing our immigration policies to undermine our education, our fiscal responsibility. When a school district is all of a sudden saddled with the need to provide classes in 3 different languages, and it's a small school district, I think that it's a reasonable thing to talk about. Do we have a national language? Many countries do. It almost seems like we've lost our minds. I mean, to me, these aren't complicated issues, but we're sort of the nuts and bolts of this country. People that get up in the morning and go to work and come home at the end of the day and want to be able to allow their kids to go out and play and know that the neighborhood is safe and that they're getting a good education in school and not being indoctrinated. And like I said before, this is on Republicans. We keep fighting. We don't band together and win elections. It's been 35 statewide elections in a row. We're always presented with this. You're either this or you're that. No, a lot of times you can be both this and that. We can be for reasonable immigration policies as long as you follow the rules. And we can be for a strong southern border that says we're not going to be a sieve. It isn't all against immigrants or all for immigrants. We have rules. We're a law nation. We're a nation of laws. If you go back and look at Bill Clinton's, I think, State of the State address in 1994, I think it was, where he's saying in 1994 exactly what President Trump is doing. I thought of one other thing about the either or, because people ask me about, what am I personally in terms of pro-life, pro-choice. Well, my wife and I, we had to fight tooth and nail to have a family. We had a hard time. We had to engage in some of those infertility instruments that you had to do, basal body temperatures, timing when you can have sex. I mean, that's a great way to take the fun out of it. And things like that. And we had 3 miscarriages, and we had 6 pregnancies, and we had 3 healthy children, and we wanted to have a big family, but we couldn't. So for my wife and I, absolutely, we're pro-life. But we understand that from a policy perspective, 75% of Minnesotans have indicated that they want some access preserved, and the judiciary, the Supreme Court, has settled the issue. So I beg you, please, let's win an election. Let's straighten out our elections and fairness. Let's recognize that it's been a long time since we've won a statewide election. Len.
Oh, yeah, thanks for bringing up the transgender issue too. I had an amendment to prohibit it to minor children, and I had a fight with my own caucus to bring it forward in the Senate, and about 3-4 times. So we do need a strong leader on that. I think we've seen the consequences on minor children and mutilated children, the cross-sex hormones, constant, they become a cash cow for the pharmacy is what it amounts to. So anyway, thanks for bringing that up. Just on abortion, I would add this. The Democrats passed radical abortion laws. Number one, you could...
Glenn, we know that.
Yeah, I know. In other words, I think you could say, they're going to attack you on this, but you can kill a child right up till birth, okay?
Yes.
And if the child it survives abortion, you can allow that child to die where we used to have. So repealing those laws, I think, is a winner with the state of Minnesota. When you look at the pro-life organizations and
Glenn, do you honestly believe?
Just let me finish.
No, Glenn, I'm not going to let you finish here because you can talk after I'm done. I'm trying to do a Q&A with folks.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but I mean, you're
I'm
talking about
a question. Okay?
What's your question?
Okay, I'll bring it up to you.
Thank you.
Okay, what I'm trying to get you to understand is, with the pro-life organizations, you have most Minnesotans support abortion in the first trimester, okay? But in the second and third trimester,
Amen. The
they don't.
statistics agree with you.
So I do think a good position politically is to oppose.
Well, then you disagree completely with President Trump
No,
because he does not agree with you.
I don't think. Listen,
He's made it clear to our campaign.
Oh, okay.
He has repeatedly.
Yeah, I know. Okay, well then I do.
So if you want to go on record that you're against President Trump's position in the 2024 campaign, that's fine. I'm not going there.
Yeah, what I'm trying to tell you is there is some winning positions on the abortion issue. Okay?
I think what you should have done in the legislature is passed a constitutional amendment so the people could decide this. Because clearly it's a political hot potato, and the politicians don't want to do it. Why didn't you have a constitutional amendment so that the people could vote? And they could say, okay, we'll allow first trimester and nothing else. You have that opportunity. Do that.
We didn't.
But don't campaign on it, Glenn, because you're kidding yourself.
No,
if you think that we're going to win an election in 13 months by running on these issues because you're passionate about them, I think you're part of the problem.
Okay.
I do.
We'll have to agree to disagree on that.
I would love to. So can we move on to an issue that might help win an election?
Here's the next issue, is they did pass, supported by the LGBTQ lobby, mandated sex ed right down to the kindergarten level.
I think that's wrong.
Right, and I think that we can win on that issue because I don't think parents want their children taught sexual perversion.
Okay, I'm just going to go with, in the election coming up in 2026, right now, it looks like there's about 30 to 35% Republicans, about 35 to 40% Democrats, and the rest are independents. We need to get that independent vote. We're not going to get that vote by trying to make this election about social issues. We need to talk about the 80-20 issues. We are an embarrassment in this country because of our fraud. We raised our budget from $50 billion to $72 billion. We have absolutely undermined the integrity of our government. We have got to recognize that the issues that are going to win for us is protect our children, protect the privacy and fairness for women and girls, spend responsibly, excess begets excess. This all started because we had $18 billion surplus that should have been returned to you, but it wasn't. It was spent, and we don't know where it went. We don't have anything to show for it. And at the same time, they increase taxes by $10 billion. Those are the issues we win elections by. Not by the fact that you feel morally convicted and that you're right, Glenn. But everywhere you go, you bring this up. And you're making it harder for us to win legislative seats and to win a statewide election. So, Glenn...
We're going to disagree.
Glenn,
I'm going to finish my question.
No,
okay?
you're not.
You're going to show me the respect.
Glenn,
Yes, you are. The other thing is, are you for school choice in the inner city?
I have been for vouchers or school choice or ESA or anything we can do to let parents direct where their education will take place over and over again. We need to restore parental rights. We absolutely do. Parents have been shortchanged. They feel like they can't discipline their children or raise their children the way they want. Next question.
Okay, just to let you know, you lost my support. Okay.
Glenn, that's okay. That's okay.
And I'll influence as many people as I can.
Feel free.
I will.
Feel free. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks for coming tonight. This is one of the reasons why Republicans seem to be failing in this party, is because you have such a, Democrats, they stick side by side no matter if you can put whatever you want on the ballot, the Democrats are going to vote for it, even how bad it is or how far left it is. They unite as one, and they don't follow the rule of law. We all know that. Article 6, Section 2. And I've asked a couple questions. Article 6, Section 2 says the supremacy clause. That means you abide by the rule of the land, the supreme law of the land. When we have like abortion issues, that's the supreme law of the land. We have to abide by it. That's what's set forth today. So we don't have any choice at this level. At the local level, we have no choice about abortion. We can argue till we're blue to this. It ain't gonna happen. They've already set the law. That's Article 6, Section 2. You want to change it? You go to the Supreme Court. So we can just bypass abortion because we can do anything about it at this level, anyways. One of the things I'm concerned about, and I think most of the people in Minnesota are concerned about, brought this up to you 4 years ago. Personally, I think you won the election until that spike happened, and then I think you won the election. We all know you won the election. It was written by Steve Simon, and he's going to do it again. And I think one of the biggest concerns people are having in Minnesota right now is the gentleman up in front there talked about the immigration issue, and he was talking about the word assimilation. And I'm not sure if you're even aware of this, and I want to help you with your success to move forward. Under Section 7.2 of the 1980 Refugee Resettlement Act, we got 10 voluntary agencies that work with the contract with the federal government. We got Bishop, Catholic bishops, Lutheran Social Services, whatever. In their bylaws, in their handbook, it says, right in their handbook, it says, you must never use the word assimilation. You must use the word integration, and you must never take away the culture that they come from. Even though it's failed, they must keep the culture that's failed so they come to the United States. As a governor, you got to say, wait a second, that has to change. Because, and most people don't even know that's in their handbook. So when we talk about assimilation, the integration, that just says, hey, if they don't use the word integration, you know what happens? They lose their 501c3 status. They lose their funding from the state to the federal government. So we're dealing with a state entity or a State Department entity that's bringing voluntary agencies in here that are running rickshaw over our republic and saying don't use those, use failed state ideas. And I think that we need to understand, a lot of politicians don't even know that this is out there. Why are they using the word integration?
Well, you've gone pretty deep in the weeds on that one, and I appreciate your willingness to educate all of us, and me included. But I think that's why Donald Trump, in the 2024 platform that he put together, he has these 20 statements of principle, and then the next page is all about common sense. And I think that when you mentioned assimilation, which one of you said, someone, okay, I think you're just saying common sense. We don't have the kind of dollars and resources that we can teach our classes in English and Spanish and Russian and Somali. We just don't. And if people want to be citizens in this country, it's a privilege. If you don't want to be, then don't come. That's okay. We know that we are a nation of immigrants at some level, but we've all assimilated. And that's why some countries feel like it is important to have a national language, so that we relieve our schools and all that. So these are tough issues, but at the end of the day, I think Trump is right. It's the 80-20 issues that we can win on straight up. Provide protection for our kids. Provide fairness and privacy to girls and women. Have a strong southern border. Have an economy that roars because a rising tide raises all ships. You know, frankly, if you talk to union shops or merit shops, they want the same thing. They want a sizzling economy. There was an article I read the other day where they said, absolutely without question, part of the reason that there's been such inflation on the cost of homes in Minnesota is because of the number of people vying for the homes that are there. And that makes all the sense in the world. We need to recognize that. We've lost our minds. Common sense has gone out the door, and Republicans keep on fighting, bickering, vehemently, and we lose. And we lose, and we lose.
I think you got a good point there, but when it comes down to, as a governor, you need to come in, and when you win, or whoever wins, you gotta come in there and say, hey, enough, let's get away from the Refugee Resettlement Act. You need to be one of the first governors in the country that says we're walking away from the Refugee Resettlement Act, because refugee resettlement in Minnesota has destroyed Minnesota. I'll give you an example. The Somali population in Minnesota right now, and we see it's up to 1 billion and climbing with the amount of fraud. If you need our future, you got driving Anastasia, you got Ormond fraud. We're talking in the billions and daycare fraud, and it's continuing. And so when we're talking about the refugee resettlement program, we're talking about fraud all the way across the board. You take, for example, the Somali population right now. It's at 95% below the poverty rate in Wilbur. They're at 95% below the poverty rate in Wilbur, and yet they have genial food and they're working there. How can you be at 95%? Means almost 100% of the Somali population lives on subsidized welfare at $47,000 a year and still working at genial food. You go to St. Cloud, they're at 72% below the poverty line, and the poverty line is at 8.6 statewide. How can you get 72 and 95? And then you've got the fraud, the fraud and the voting. It just continues. And then we haven't got into the biggest fraud of all. That's going to be the marriage fraud. So I'm going to ask you, when you get in, or whoever gets in, and we got under Surah 3 of the Quran, Surah 3:4, it says that you can have up to 4 wives. Not many of them. They have 4 wives. How are you going to identify and say, okay, this guy's married this one, but he has 3 other wives collectively?
So what's the question?
So my question is, how are you going to stop the fraud with 4 wives and only identify the one with 32 kids? Because that's what they're averaging between 4 wives.
Well, the first thing we do is you get rid of sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. You simply say we're going to we're not going to allow that. I mean, you can do that right out of the chute. That the governor doesn't get to declare this law and that law, but you can do a lot with executive orders, to be sure. But this is why, if we could win the trifecta and bring some sanity back to it, but I can't tell you what specific acts I would take that I would get the first day, but we would get rid of the sanctuary status in regards to immigration, because that's hurting us. And in terms of this and that specific refugee act, I'm with you completely. I think that there's been a lot of hullabaloo about the fact that 1.3 million people on medical assistance are going to be coming off of medical assistance because of Trump's big, beautiful bill. What no one's talking about is that if you actually look at what happens when people come off of medical assistance, it's not as if, poof, they die. They don't. There's some studies that actually indicate that when they're not accessing physicians, they get healthier, which isn't a great statement for my profession. But nevertheless, we need to recognize that if you do get booted off of medical assistance because you make too much money or whatever, if you have a medical crisis come up, you can apply and there's a 90-day look back. So if someone is off of medical assistance and they have an appendectomy or they have a cancer diagnosis, they are going to get back on medical assistance and they will actually have 90-day look back. So I think that, again, these are the things that I think Trump is trying to do, is he's trying to talk common sense. We're spending more money than we have. Our national debt is going up every decade by a double. If you look at our national debt in 1990, it was $3 trillion. A decade later, it was $6 trillion. In 2010, it was $12 trillion. In 2020, it was $24 trillion. Right now, we're on schedule for 2030, it'd be close to $48 trillion. This is not sustainable. As a country, we're at risk. If we assume that America will always be the bright, shining city on a hill just because we've been that way for 250 years, we're wrong. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've got a question about gun rights as far as where you're at with that, and then I have a second follow-up. Where are you at with gun rights, protecting the Second Amendment in the state of Minnesota, and then I have a follow-up when you're done.
The Second Amendment, right, I always think of it as 5 syllables, comma, 5 syllables. The right to bear arms, comma, shall not be infringed. It's that simple. I'm a gun owner. Bottom line is we have over 600 million guns owned by private citizens in this country. That's not going to change. When we talk about every time a calamity or a catastrophic thing occurs, and we say, do something with the guns, we're going to move past guns. There's going to be drones. People are going to get very skilled at blowing up buildings with drones. This is a part of our society. When someone blows people up that they don't know and don't have any issue, they're not mentally well. This is a problem with our mental health as a nation. And it's happening around the world, not just here. The Second Amendment rights have to stand strong. The Constitution is the thing that got us through 250 years, and we can't go willy-nilly kicking it around and expecting to stand strong as a nation. Next question.
It's related to that. So this recent, what is it, Annunciation Church that had the...
Annunciation.
Thank you. So I guess one thing, the transgender here, but before I get into that, usually whenever you have an accident or something, car accident or whatever, they always take a blood test and you kind of know what things are at. And I guess in the case of this, if you get a transgender, what you talked about previously with transgender drugs, is it ever allowable to question if the drugs they were taking was the cause of the accident? I mean, you can't talk about that now.
I think that's a very good point. I think the notion that if someone is accused of being involved in a mass shooting, that we draw blood samples looking for toxic, we should be looking for every medication level as well as illicit drugs. Absolutely.
Are these drugs detectable?
Well, drugs like Zoloft and Depakote and lithium, Abilify, Mellaril, antipsychotics are all detectable, to be sure. What's that? Hormones are tougher. I mean, hormones fluctuate and we make them ourselves. Like when I measure a cortisol level, if I'm looking at someone with a Cushing's disease, I have to find out, I need to know when the blood was drawn. Was it drawn at 8 in the morning, noon, or 6 at night? So there's that, but we can learn a lot from it. But I think that suffice it to say, with young people, when we're putting them on these meds, especially crossover hormones and hormone blockers, it's an absolute medical fact that we're disturbing their cortisol levels. And if you put in the Google box when you go home tonight, cortisol level fluctuation, it will tell you what happens. And it isn't where we're at our best as humans. It's not where we're calm and thoughtful and kind to one another. It's where we're swinging. We got the big mood swings. We're anxious, we're irritable, we're raging. Those are the kinds of things. So the notion that using hormone blockers and crossover hormones is a benign thing to do because we're not cutting something open, I think is silly. Yes, sir.
I've got a medical question now. I guess one of the things with insurance, going way back to Obamacare, is supposed to be this wonderful cure, and it wasn't. And I guess the one thing too, I'm wondering if you've ever heard of like the medical caution things, like Good Samaritans and
Sure.
things like that. And I mean, doesn't that not work at a far less cost?
Well, you're talking about medical sharing. There's numerous Christian organizations that do it. That's a big question, and we'll let this be the last question. The thing I'd say about that is, with the medical sharing, sometimes patients feel like they didn't get what they thought they were going to get in terms of support. So I've seen that happen, particularly if it's a surgery or something like that. Perhaps, and there's numerous ones, there's MediShare and those kind of things. But I just want to say something about Obamacare. Obamacare took an idea from the 1980s that was supported by the Heritage Foundation and has elements in it that make sense. And Obama absolutely bastardized it. He made every plan in Obamacare's exchange required 10 essential health benefits. In other words, he said to you, even though he told you publicly you could keep your doctor, he basically put a plan in place that was no way going to allow you to keep your doctor or your insurance. He basically said, you're going to have a Cadillac plan that covers this, 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 and by the way, you will be covered for pregnancy whether or not you need it as a man. This is what was put in the plan. The 10 essential health benefits is one of the most devastating pieces of Obamacare. It ramped the entire cost up. You should be able to buy what you want. I think, Glenn, you're pretty involved in insurance. And the notion of being able to buy a catastrophic policy, I think makes sense. And I think there's other ways we could do it. But one of the most important things to keep the cost of healthcare down is to have a relationship with your doctor. Because if you have someone that you trust, and you say, do I need to have this done? I had an 85-year-old guy in Friday, and he was thinking about a joint replacement. And I said, that'd really be a bad idea. And he said, why? I know 85-year-olds that got joint replacements. I said, yeah, but they don't have congestive heart failure, emphysema, uncontrolled diabetes, hypertension, elevated cholesterol. You got all those. You're not going to get off the table. And he said, yeah, I guess it doesn't make much sense. And I said, do you want me to give you a cortisone shot? No, he said, it really doesn't bother me that much. I said, well, why are we having this conversation? But I mean, I think that when you have someone that you can have a conversation with, that holds the cost down. There's a plan called direct primary care where you can pay $75 a month and you get everything that the clinic offers. I mean, they could be taking medical assistance patients, plugging them into a clinic, and for $1,000 a year, that's where they go for their ongoing urgent care. And then a catastrophic policy coupled with that. Now you've sort of got coverage for that. And it's a whole lot cheaper. A whole lot cheaper. But we're not having those conversations. Generally, Republicans have wanted to lead those conversations. But we haven't been able to because we haven't won the elections. We're seeing some good work out of Washington with people like Rand Paul. I think Michael Johnson has done a great job as speaker. We're seeing the people trying to nibble at these conversations. But in Minnesota, it's been a long time. And frankly, looking back at the legislature, I think in 2017 and 2018, we missed a golden opportunity to get more done because we had both the Republican House and the Republican Senate. And granted, Governor Dayton was a governor, but he was not a strong governor. And we should have pushed harder, way harder, to get some of these things done. Folks, I really appreciate it. Go ahead. Yes, sir?
I think what you should do is look at some of the governors that are successful right now, Republican, like DeSantis, like Christie Noel. I actually did her a couple years ago. And follow what they did to get the popularity they have.
What kinds of things are you thinking?
Well, for one thing, tax. Property tax. You want to get a bunch of people on your side? Talk about eliminating property tax. There's a way to do that. Find out what are they doing in Florida? How do they eliminate property tax?
Florida's a red state, and so is South Dakota, sir.
Well, sure, but we want to make it a red state, right?
But we're not going to get there when you have 52% of the population getting free stuff from the government, and then you come in and say we're going to take away that tax. These people aren't stupid. Yeah, 52%.
Yeah, but how do we get more Republicans to vote?
We go get the independents to win. You're not going to, yeah, but when you have the number of homeowners that pay property taxes, it's a minority. Yeah. Right now, Joe Souchere was on about a month ago, and he said this. In 1950, 50% of 30-year-olds were married and owned a home in 1950. Today, it's less than 15%. Structurally, we've changed. I think if you actually look at the number of, frankly, the number of people, the number of homes that are owned in Minnesota, I think they're definitely a minority. I raised the issue in 2022 and just got blistered when I said, can we have a conversation about could we be a state that goes without a state income tax? We had an $18 billion surplus. I thought that if we could ramp up tourism, get mining going in the north, stimulate our economy, we could do that. I absolutely got demonized for being one more wealthy Republican who doesn't want to pay his fair share. So to your idea, I don't mean to be super critical, But there's no way in hell I'm running on that issue in this campaign.
What are they doing to be successful?
Well, they're red states. It makes a difference. We haven't voted for a presidential candidate that was Republican since Richard Nixon. Let's face facts. We need the independents to help us win. And independents are getting sick and tired of the fraud. They're getting sick and tired of what's happening to their kids in school. They're getting sick and tired that their parental rights are being taken from them. They're sick and tired of not having safe neighborhoods. And that's what Trump's trying to tell us. He's saying, run on the issues you can win on. It's that simple. I got to leave. Thank you so much, folks. I really appreciate it.